Hello, fellow Azerothians. I know. But Classic World of Warcraft is less than 10 days away, and I'd like to get some discussion going around it. There's hundreds of topics on my mind. I'm just going to condense it into one big, what's more of a podcast than a video. So whether you're sitting at the login screen in Classic WoW and anxiously waiting for the estimated server uptime to tick down, or you're playing your game of choice while you wait, I hope this is a good video to have in the background or on your second screen. And when I do come to a topic that's near and dear to your heart or very important to you, please take a minute to go down to the comments section and add your feelings and add to the discussion. But without further ado, let's dive in. Now, I have monitored Classic World of Warcraft for a long time, but never fully dove in. Mostly because I always knew it would happen. EverQuest, its predecessor, had its private emulated servers. Finally, Daybreak Games got on board and released their own Classic servers to resounding success. I knew that when Activision Blizzard finally came around to it, the Classic World of Warcraft servers would be bigger and better than the EverQuest ones, just as it was back in 2004. So for me, it was sort of avoiding spoilers. If I was going to really dive into it again, I want it to be as fresh an experience as possible. And even though I have played on some of the private Classic servers, they just don't feel permanent and polished enough. Be it the games they play to jockey for position and players, they'll allow you to get gear or gold for free by liking them on the internet, or the risk of a private server administrator just packing up shop one day, because either they're no longer interested or they've been threatened with legal action. So going into Classic World of Warcraft, I'm relatively fresh. While I did brush up on raiding on a private server, it's been almost 15 years since I've gone through the vanilla new player experience on Azeroth. Not only have I forgotten a lot of the world, this time around I'm going to switch factions because I really feel like I missed an entire half of the game, only playing Horde my first go around. I know, I'm sorry, I'm a dirty traitor, fellow Horde members. I hope as retribution after a glorious 12-hour battle in Alterac Valley. Those times you defeat me and my Alliance brethren, you hoist my dwarf head on a stake, in payback for me straying from my Horde ways. But no, in all seriousness, the conflict brought so much wonderful story, life to the world of Azeroth. And it was fun to experience it from one side, and I feel like I get to play a whole new game, really, now going to the other side. So just something to consider. Many of you may be like, I'm doing exactly what I did the first time, but better. I'm going right back to my class and my faction and my guild and all that. But stop and think about it for a minute. Maybe it would help with replayability if you really just try to switch it up. Try to do something totally different. Something that you don't really know. That will help you get the experience. That will help it feel much more like Classic if you go into it as green as possible. And while we're on that topic, let's talk about that. Is Classic rose-tinted glasses, or is it great? Well, it's great. There's no question there. But I want to caution people and let people down a little bit easy now that feel like it's going to be just like it was back in 2004. The game was great, but part of what made it so great was that you knew nothing, and everyone knew nothing. You can't have that back. Not completely. Even if you do what I do, going polar opposite to what you did the last time. Different classes, different factions, changing it up as much as possible. There still is built-up knowledge in your head that will come flooding back, and it will suppress some of that initial awe and wonderment. Running out of Coldbridge Valley through the tunnel that led into the rest of Dunmorrow was a truly epic experience the first time around. Having read The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy and loved it, it was like, wow, they did it. They built an immersive, breathtaking world that you can go be whatever you want in. And this time around, it will still be fun, But it will also be, oh yeah, I remember those trogs. Oh yeah, there's that black bear to daze me, I remember that. And I think a lot of people realize this, especially the people that never stopped playing Classic, that have been on the private Classic servers for a long time. For many people, this won't be their second time doing the vanilla Classic experience. It will be their 10th, or their 13th, or their 20th, or, hey, for you crazy people, your 57th. Okay guys, I want to jump over to some of the discussion on the subreddit. I've followed the lows of the subreddit, of someone reviewing adult diapers for the grind to level 60, and the highs, and a good example of that is the recent AMA by the Classic WoW devs. There is understandably a lot of fear that Blizzard, and I really should say Activision Blizzard, is going to screw it up. Start messing with too many pieces, modernizing it too much, and accidentally chipping away at the soul of the game, what it was back in 2004. And one of the big concerns is layering, and it was addressed really nicely in today's AMA. I'm going to have a link down in the description, but I'm going to go through it here and kind of pull the main takeaway out of it. People are concerned that Blizzard is going to use layering to understandably manage the massive influx of population at the beginning of the game, but they aren't going to get rid of it fast enough. They will overload servers at the start, and then some unlucky people will end up in near empty lairs, and even though there's plenty of population, it won't feel like Classic, it won't feel like the original world, because you get stuck in a near empty lair. Not to mention all the implications of grouping, trading, and world PvP. But the senior software engineer explains it pretty well that the real concern is the initial load. And the most extreme point is that first day when everyone comes in at level 1. For them to manage that load without layering, they would need to increase the amount of servers 10 times. And then in 2 weeks, when all the tourists leave, 9 out of 10 of those servers would start feeling really empty. So say you have 500 dwarves starting on day 1. The server can't handle 500 dwarves in Coldridge Valley. Now 8 days after launch, when those dwarves have spread through Dunmorrow, Loch Modan, Wetlands, Arathi Highlands, maybe even into the Hinterlands, then the server can handle that same amount of dwarves without any layering. The major issue for the servers is when there are so many people in one tiny area. So yes, I know layering is scary, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There will be times that it will affect you. The dev here in the AMA is making it sound like they have really locked down all the bugs with it. And all the ones that cropped up during the stress test, I'm sure they have. But they probably haven't seen every situation where layering could ruin the immersion. It will mess with you a little bit on launch, but I absolutely think it's a necessary evil. And definitely a piece of modern technology we should embrace as we go into the launch of vanilla World of Warcraft. 2 months down the road, your Classic server will feel a lot healthier because they made sure they started with a lot more characters on it than it would if they skipped layering and just opened up hundreds of servers to deal with the initial load. So I implore you, fellow Azerothians, to not let that ruin your experience. Just as in the stress test where people discovered a bug where they would switch layers when they went into capital cities, I know there will be a bug in layering that got missed, and they will find it on the live servers in the live environment and scream to high heaven, "See, this is what we were talking about." But if you can stop and pause and think about the other realities, which is either 8-hour queues, and I know some of you are up for it because you remember the original Classic launch, but for a lot of us, for most people, I think we're past that stage in our lives where we want to deal with that anymore. I know I don't have that kind of time or patience anymore. At this point, I expect to be able to sit down and get into the game pretty quickly with a short queue if necessary. So queue times are definitely a major negative, and they should do everything they can to avoid those. Layering is not so drastically going to violate the integrity of vanilla WoW that we should be forced into a major queue situation. And then the other option is lower server caps. That is, open a lot more servers and have less people on them. But just think, 2 months in, when people start slowing down, getting tired of it, they got to re-experience it, they got their fix, and now they're done, your capital cities are really going to start feeling weak. It's going to start being really hard to find groups. Battlegrounds aren't going to pop up as fast. There is no cross-server play here anymore. They have to make sure all of the classic servers are stacked with characters, or it is going to suck finding people to raid for groups or getting battlegrounds to pop up. Layering will enable them to focus a lot more characters on individual servers, which will make them feel a lot better 2 months down the road. So anyways, we'll stop beating that dead horse. Have faith in Blizzard, they do a damn good job. And when they do screw up something minor in relation to that system, have some patience with them. I guarantee they'll get it fixed. Okay, and the final thing I want to chat about is Classic versus Live. And I want to counterpoint that discussion by jumping back to EverQuest. Because I've kind of watched this hilarious effect as the discussion has taken place about how people hate kind of all the modern advancements that came with the growth and development of World of Warcraft over the years. Because a lot of those same complaints that we see between Classic World of Warcraft and Live World of Warcraft are the complaints that I saw transitioning from EverQuest to Classic World of Warcraft. Yet, even with all those complaints, World of Warcraft, even in the vanilla stage, blew EverQuest out of the water. So let's talk about gear. In Live World of Warcraft, epics are everywhere. Not being decked out in purple is just weird. Back in vanilla World of Warcraft, just getting the blues, the rares, was really awesome. You were sporting a lot of green stuff until you were level 60. So there is an excitement that gear will be more meaningful again in vanilla. Now going back to EverQuest, everyone complained about how easy it was to get gear in vanilla World of Warcraft. The concept of greens was something EverQuest did not have at all. It was not uncommon to be a max rank character that would be wearing armor that only had armor class. In World of Warcraft, by the time you hit max rank, even if you're wearing all greens, your gear has strength or stamina or intelligence on it. In EverQuest, finding any of those pieces was extremely difficult and dropped from rare creatures that there was usually a camp rotation going on. In World of Warcraft, you started finding that gear from quests or dungeons as early as Battle Rank 10. So, World of Warcraft Live certainly took it too far. There is too much epic gear out there, and it cheapens every other piece of gear that it's so easy to find stuff. But EverQuest had the pendulum in too far the other direction, where it was so unbearable to find loot, there wasn't enough excitement in that realm, and people fell away and went to World of Warcraft. So I think World of Warcraft Vanilla really hit the Goldilocks zone in terms of the right amount of gear available. The next complaint I find funny from Classic to World of Warcraft Live is flying mounts. Oh, it's way too easy to get anywhere in World of Warcraft Live. I want it to be like Classic, where it felt like it was a challenge to travel across the continent. But in Classic, you still had mounts at level 40, and you had flight paths around the continent, and boat rides were instant. It's funny, EverQuest laughed at the idea of World of Warcraft because you don't get mounts at any level. Boat rides are not instant. You literally had to sit on the boat for 20 minutes to take a boat ride. And there's no such thing as flight paths. You literally just ran everywhere. Now it got easier once you got to a higher level to travel around the world. But in the vanilla experience, that was basically unheard of. Whereas in vanilla World of Warcraft, you're getting flight paths right off the bat. So anyways, again, we can laugh at how World of Warcraft Live made it too easy, but the pendulum does swing too far the other way, and that was vanilla EverQuest. Again, World of Warcraft Classic really landed in the Goldilocks zone, giving you ways to get around, but not making the world feel cheap and small by making you too mobile. What else? World of Warcraft modernized corpse runs to an extreme degree. In EverQuest, if you fought a boss and you wiped, you would die and your corpse was under that boss with all of your gear on. You were expected to go back into the dungeon and try to recover your corpse from under the boss with nothing on. And World of Warcraft came onto the scene and just said, okay, walk back into the dungeon as a ghost and you're good to go. Maps was another big thing. Vanilla EverQuest didn't let you have a map. When World of Warcraft came along, the fact that you had a discoverable map was a really cool modernization feature. And the list goes on, from dungeons to instanced raids, less punishing professions, adding in gathering professions, NPC auction houses, interesting combat mechanics for melee classes beyond auto attack, yada yada. What I'm driving at here, guys, is World of Warcraft Classic is not great because of some sort of regression away from all of the modernization. World of Warcraft Vanilla, for its time, was an extreme swing into modernization. It was so great then, and we look back on it with such admiration now because of how good of a job it did of landing in that Goldilocks zone between accessibility and sandboxiness. And it's good to rage against dangerous things like cross-server queues for dungeons. These sorts of things will kill off any sort of sense of community that each server will build up. But at the same time, there are some modernization things that will make the classic experience the same but better that we should embrace. Layering being one we chatted about. And I know more will pop up as vanilla wears on, where we will have to carefully weigh the pros and cons of sticking to the exact trajectory of Classic, or saying, you know what, that piece of Classic didn't really work out. It wasn't really worked out at the time. We can do it better now. Let's be open-minded to that. Okay, fellow Azerothians, that's what's on my mind regarding World of Warcraft Classic right now. Again, please share your thoughts down in the comments. Whatever's on your mind. Let me know how much of a disaster layering is going to be and how it's going to ruin everything. Whatever you're thinking about. Otherwise, we're all just going to have to sit tight for roughly another week. And we will be back on Azeroth before you know it. That's all for now. And until next time, I will see you planetside.